There once was an old silver boot who hoarded up all of the loot. He charged me for rent, took my dollars and cents, so I sent the police in pursuit. Hey guys, James here with another video, this time talking about Monopoly. I know this isn't like my usual video game content, but as someone who loves games of all sorts, whether they be video games, board games, and even sports, I want to explore Monopoly as a game from a design perspective. Monopoly is arguably the most famous board game of all time. If you're watching this video, chances are you probably have a set buried in a closet somewhere or have memories of playing the game during a family gathering. Of course, a lot of these memories are probably ones of frustration and anger over a game which sometimes just never seems to end.
Fuck this game! It's 4 in the morning, Grandma! You win!
With the board game revival and a bunch of awesome new games coming out, I think we can very easily take a look back at the game and realize that Monopoly is a terribly designed game, at least from a game design perspective. I think there's a couple of reasons for this. I think for one thing, Monopoly is a game almost entirely based on luck, and in some ways, this is a large part of why the game is so popular. It makes it so the game is easy to pick up, and it also makes it so everyone has a chance to win in any given game. However, this design often results in games that are often fun for one or two people, and unbearable for everyone else. I honestly think it's not an exaggeration for me to say that Monopoly is at least 90% luck. Not to say that there's no strategy or skill involved in Monopoly, but the amount of skill relative to the amount of time playing is pretty small. This is largely due to the fact that the game is pretty much completely up to the roll of the dice. The dice decide what property you can buy, or if you need to pay someone rent. Since you have no real control over what properties you own, you in turn really have no control over what properties you can trade for as well. I don't necessarily want the light blue Monopoly, but when I have two of them in the game, it pretty much forces me to trade for the last one to complete my set. The dice decide pretty much everything in the game, and there's really no player agency involved outside of trading. In fact, I'll tell you right now how to win a Monopoly. Step 1. Roll well. Step 2. Buy everything except maybe utilities, which are widely considered fairly useless. Step 3. See if you can obtain a natural monopoly. That is, obtaining a monopoly without having to trade. If not, try to trade for a monopoly without trading a monopoly to someone else. Be careful about trading monopolies for monopolies. These can get a little messy. And if you do have to give someone else a monopoly in exchange for yours, only do so on your turn so they can't start building houses before you. Try your best to obtain the red and orange properties because these are landed on the most often. This is largely because of their relation on the board to where jail is, but even then, again, the game is largely luck, and so there's no guarantee you'll be able to get any of those properties or anything really useful at all. Build houses and hotels whenever you can, and in the late game, stay in jail as long as you can so you can avoid landing on other people's property. And that's about it. Monopoly in a nutshell. In fact, from a design perspective, I would say that Monopoly is a game at odds with itself. I say this because trading is integral to the game, and you almost always have to trade to be able to set up monopolies and win, but if you think about it, giving a monopoly to someone else is almost always against your own self-interest, and it creates more risk of you losing. Sure, you might have a better chance of winning if you get a monopoly back, but because everything is determined by dice rolls, it kinda just comes down to who lands on whose monopoly first. That's why, realistically, the best way to win, or rather, not lose, is to never trade your properties. Not only that, but if you have to trade a monopoly to someone else, it's pretty much impossible to get a fair deal. People will try and convince you, hey, trade me this property for that property and I'll pay you cash for the difference in the market value of the two. But this ignores the difference in what you'd have to pay in the event you land on each other's improved properties. And no, it's not normally allowed to trade for immunity, although there are some house rules around this. Since again, the game is entirely luck of the dice, it can sometimes take so many turns for someone to finally land on another person's big property. If you're playing with some people who just refuse to give up, then the game just becomes way too long for the relative amount of fun. Because of these flaws in the game flow, Monopoly usually creates situations where people end up needing to team up and give favorable trades to someone, just so the first place person doesn't run away with the game. Not only that, but Monopoly has a slew of house rules. A lot of these house rules can add some fun, but I would argue that a lot of the popular house rules actually do the opposite of what they're intended to do. Here, I want to highlight two popular ones. First, the one lap before buying rule. This is a rule where you need to pass go once in order to start buying property. The goal of the rule is to make it so the first person or the first few people to roll don't have a huge advantage being able to buy properties first, but in reality, this house rule actually kinda does the opposite. Can it work? Absolutely. However, by forcing people to go around the board, it ends up making it so that people who happen to roll high, or people who get lucky chance or community chest cards, that these people will be able to buy first and sometimes significantly earlier than others. People who get low rolls or get sent to jail on the first lap fall behind massively. Without this rule, at least everyone can start buying at the same turn, and the first turn advantage only really happens if people happen to land on the same property as those who rolled before them. Sure, it sucks for people going last, but at least you have the ability to buy on the same turn, rather than, say, potentially 5 turns later. Another popular house rule is the free parking rule. This rule will vary household to household, but commonly, what it consists of is a fixed amount, or any tax, chance or community chest, and jail payments going to the free parking space. If you happen to land on it, then you get money. Yay! However, when one of the biggest issues with Monopoly is the potentially long playtime, the free parking money house rule is something which only makes the game last longer, as it inserts cash into the system, whereas these payments originally would have been designed to reduce cash in the system. Sure, people like getting money and feeling lucky, but in the end, it forces you to play more Monopoly, which is a loss in my book. Despite my criticisms of it from a design standpoint, the game actually does accomplish what it sets out to do. If you look at the history of the game, the concept of the game was developed back in 1903 by Lizzie Magie, an anti-monopolist who argued that economic rent derived from land, natural resources, and the commons should belong equally to all members of society. As the game exemplifies, when people own land and earn wealth from rent, wealth eventually is accumulated in the lucky players who managed to obtain properties and monopolies earlier, resulting in other players being destroyed and not having fun. So I guess from that perspective, the game does actually do exactly what it sets out to do. Mission accomplished. However, this creates a game where, like I said, it usually ends up with 1 or 2 people who are actually having fun, while everyone else is just doing math. So with all of that being said, how do we fix Monopoly? There really isn't a simple answer here, and I haven't really done any testing to see how these might work out, but here are some house rules I think you can maybe try implementing into your next game and see if it makes a better experience. Bid for the first turn. At the start of the game, have a bidding war or a blind bet to see who goes first. This way you can potentially balance out first turn advantages by giving the first person less cash to start. Auction all properties. What I mean by this is anytime a property is landed on by a player, put it up for auction immediately and give everyone a chance to buy it. This removes the whole first turn advantage and actually creates some strategy with bidding, cash flow, and figuring out what properties you really want to own. Allow building on singular properties. I know this one breaks the core point of Monopoly, but maybe you could allow building a certain amount of houses on singular properties, with more houses and/or hotels only becoming available once you have a full Monopoly set. This could potentially help speed up the game and reduce the reliance on having to trade. It also makes money shift hands earlier and more often. Buff up or add more interesting cards to chance and community chest, or create another card system which could be prevalent the entire game. So some of these card ideas could include substantially increasing the amount the cards charge or reward. I think we can all agree, other than a few cards, most of the chance or community chest card penalties are pretty negligible in the long run. Another idea is maybe you could try creating similar cards to the ones that say move 3 spaces backwards or advance to a certain space, and maybe have these be cards that you can choose when to use on a turn. That way, you can be strategic about when you want to use your movement bonuses in order to avoid deadly properties or reach ones you want to buy. Maybe have these cards be usable as a replacement to a dice roll for a turn, or have them be bonuses to your dice roll. My final idea is called mergers and acquisitions. This idea basically allows people to legally team up. Honestly, I don't really know how this would work, but it seems like a fun idea and might help if someone is really far behind. Teaming is something that seems to happen a lot anyway, so making it part of the game might actually be interesting. These last 2 rules I can't really take credit for, but I noticed they were house rules in Monopoly Plus, which I thought were interesting and wanted to share. The first is the no rent or buying houses in jail rule. Especially in the late game, an issue that arises is that people stay in jail strategically in order to avoid risking landing on enemy property. This in turn prolongs games and makes it so going to jail becomes a good thing. With this rule, people have to play a bit riskier if they want to be able to collect rent. Next, there's the landing on go rule. This rule makes it so when you land on go, you can either collect double, so $400, or you can forego the $400 and place your piece on any spot on the board that you want. This could potentially help with income issues or help people buy any pesky properties that no one seems to have landed on yet. Again, I haven't tested these rules out, so in practice, they may not end up doing what I think they should do, but hey, next time you have a family gathering, maybe try some out. But hey, that's just me. Let me know down below what you think of Monopoly. Do you think I'm wrong? Do you have any ideas on how to improve the game? I love engaging with my community and would love to hear from you. And of course, if you made it this far, I really appreciate it and I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please do consider hitting that like and subscribe button as it helps my channel grow and motivates me to make more and better videos. And as usual, I hope you have a great rest of your day. Peace.